Hello, in this short video, I would like to talk about the first chapter from the book Functional English Grammar by Graham Lock. As you can see from the title, it is a grammar which adopts a functional perspective. Let's explore what that means. Basically, we might say there are two main approaches to the study of grammar. On the one hand, formal grammar. On the other, functional grammar. Formal grammar is mainly concerned, of course, with forms. And grammar is seen as a set of rules which specify all the possible grammatical structures in a language. In the case of functional grammar, the main concern is not forms, but rather functions. Language is seen as a system of communication, and grammar is defined as a resource for making and exchanging meanings. In the case of formal grammar, the highest unit of analysis is the sentence. And the question is this sentence grammatical or not? In the case of functional grammar, the highest unit of analysis is the text. If you think about the levels described by Larson Freeman and Seltzer Murcia in their grammar book, you will see that formal grammar concentrates on the subsentential level and the sentential level, and functional grammar comprises the three levels because it also includes the suprasentential level. As regards functional grammar, the main concern is not whether a certain sentence is grammatical or ungrammatical, but rather whether a certain stretch of language, which could be a sentence or a text, is appropriate for a certain communicative purpose. Now, in order to evaluate, to decide if a stretch of language is appropriate for a certain purpose, you have to take into account the context of situation. That is, something that is outside language itself and has to do rather to, it is connected with what we are doing, where, what for. This context of situation, which is an extra linguistic, which are extra linguistic elements, are not taken into account within the formal perspective. As I said before, functional grammar is closely related to meaning. Meaning is a very important concept within the functional perspective. Let's turn then to the notion of meaning within the functional approach. Michael Halliday, the main figure within functional grammar, defines meaning as comprising three dimensions or three metafunctions. The first one is the experiential metafunction, which has to do with language as representation of our experience of the world. This is usually our idea when we think of meaning. Okay, we associate meaning with our experience of the world, what surrounds us. That is, I wrote actions, participants, and circumstances. If you say that Susan bought a car for her son last month, okay, you're talking about a person and her son, and a certain vehicle, and the action of buying, and in this case, some circumstances related to time. All right, but if we go on, we can also think of a second dimension, which is the interpersonal dimension and is related to the way in which we act upon one another and express our judgments and attitudes through language. That is, language as an interaction. The example Locke provides in this chapter is very clear. If instead of Susan bought a car for her son last month, I say, did she buy a car for her son last month? I will be talking about the same elements, let's say, from my own experience of the world. I'm talking about the same people and the same actions and circumstances. But of course, these two sentences are different. They have a different meaning, but not meaning in relation to these actions, etc., but rather there is a difference in meaning related to how I am interacting. In the first case, I'm giving information to somebody, and in the second, I'm asking for information. There is a third metafunction or dimension, the textual metafunction, which relates to the ways in which language is organized in relation to its context. Remember that we talked about the context before. We should remember that whenever we deal with functional grammar, we should remember that the context of a situation is essential. All right? Grammar cannot be understood properly without taking into account the context of situation. In his chapter, Locke gives an example of a cleft sentence, but even if instead of saying she bought a car for her son last month, I said something like a car she bought for her son last month, is it the same as my previous example? It is not. It conveys a different meaning, not because I'm talking about different participants or because I'm asking, because if I use I could be giving information to, but the way I decide to organize these responds to the context. You can only understand somebody producing that sentence if before somebody said, for example, oh, how good she bought a bike for her son. So it would make sense to say a car she bought for him. Otherwise, it would be awkward, okay? An awkward example. Well, I'm going to finish this video here, and then I'll move on to some other topics from this first chapter, which are related to syntax.